All right.
Okay, good evening. It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, March 6, 2024. This is the Harwich Finance Committee. I'll call the meeting to order. Before that, I would just advise anyone who's out in the audience that if you plan to record or attempt to video this meeting, please let the chair know. And with that, we'll move right to new business. The first item is the presentation of the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School FY25 budget. Superintendent Sanborn is here. Hopefully we can see him somewhere, somehow.
It's on
That camera.
Okay, hi.
Okay. Okay, we have our deputy police chief here with us today. So Kevin, thank you for coming. We appreciate that. It may be, to expedite this time-wise, the one question that came up at our joint budget meeting with the Board of Selectmen had to do with the cost, if you will, or inclusion of cost of the resource officer.
Sure.
And Kevin, I assume that's why you're here.
Yes.
So maybe we could take up that topic first, and then,
Certainly.
Certainly. Then we can move on to your presentation.
Yep.
Just in the interest of trying to give Kevin some time to go home and do something different, right?
Thank you.
Or solve a crime. You can solve a
Now
crime.
go home.
Yeah. Okay, the other thing I'd like to mention is we do have 6 members present this evening. I'm expecting Dana to call in a minute, so we do have a quorum. So with that.
Sure. So since I've been at the school, we've had a school resource officer. It was John Mitchell for years. Some of you may know John. And then now we have John Larrabee. We've been absolutely pleased with both of them over the years. So we've always paid $20,000. We've always had $20,000 in our budget to cover a portion of the cost of the school resource officer at our school. We're committed to having a school resource officer, so whatever ultimately needs to be done, we would participate in that. There are some ins and outs. Sometimes Officer now Larrabee gets pulled away for police duties from our school. Not often, but it does occur. And then they have the summers. So there is figuring out how you do that, how you determine how much of the services his salary is devoted to Cape Cod Tech. But I'm open to that discussion. I'm certainly not shutting it down. So the history's been $20,000. And if there's something the town wants to do to change that in any way, we want a school resource officer. We want to continue that relationship. So we're open to discussions moving forward. In this budget, I have still have $20,000, the FY25 budget that I'm presenting this evening. But so that's where we stand, because we think it's invaluable for schools and students.
I think the first misconception, at least I have, when I looked at the 20, I'm figuring that you're also assessing other towns, some sort of funds to help come up with whatever a total is for the resource officer.
Right.
So, I'm looking at that and saying, well, all right, maybe, I'm making this up, maybe Yarmouth is doing 35 and this town's doing this much and that much. But it might just be all blended into your budget, and you're paying $20,000 to Harwich to compensate for the resource officer.
Correct. We pay the town of Harwich $20,000, but it is fair to say that it is spread across the 12. That 20 is spread across the 12 towns.
Not each town at 20, but just 20 in total.
20 in total.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yep.
That was a misconception on my part.
Sure.
So, maybe I'll just ask the deputy if you have maybe you thought about this a little bit, I hope, in what the percentage of time and what the actual cost is of the resource officer. And I know it might vary, but,
So the percentage of time during the school year is full-time. During the summer, he's, especially given our manpower crisis, he's going to be on the road working a patrol shift. So during the school, he's up there and he stays up there. I mean, he doesn't leave. He gets there in the morning, leaves in the afternoon, and goes home. So he's very busy up there. Percentage of monies, no, I I don't know, you know, in our initial discussion, I was a little confused of what maybe what others were looking at for compensation. And until I know some
Okay,
thoughts.
so I'll just jump in here. It seems to me that it's somewhere around 8 months full-time, maybe it's 9 months full-time when you look at, you know, the summer, but let's say at least 8 months where he's full-time at the school.
I would say up till the end of June, right?
Yeah.
You're pretty much in till the end of June, so he's out maybe the last week in June for us, August, July, August, and then back in September.
Right.
What does he do during, when the school is shut down for vacation, like February or April or Christmas or?
We encourage our school resource officers to take their vacation time when the school takes their vacation time, and they pretty much do that. So
Okay,
they
so-
take their own time off during that time.
Okay, so now with your math, which is fine, I like your spreadsheet, by the way. That's an inside joke.
Yeah.
We get to sometimes. So now you're saying it's more like 10 months.
Yes. Yep.
Is that,
That's about right.
Yeah.
okay, so 5/6 of whatever Harwich is paying in total to that police officer should be accounted for, I mean, if you just do it by the math, by the tech school. Is that right?
Yeah, and I don't know where they came up with the 20. This was done,
Well, I don't either, but,
yeah, I would say 30 years ago. And, I mean, who knows how, if they used a
So-
formula or however. they
yeah, okay,
did it.
but do you have an idea, and I know you can get it for us down to the penny, you know, after this meeting, but, you know, if you take the officer's salary, and then anything else that goes on top, you know, the other costs to give, you know, what the full cost of that officer is for a year, and then we take 5/6 of that, what that number might be.
Absolutely. I mean, I have,
It's a lot more than 20, I know that.
yeah, I mean, I have
Yes.
the salary as of today, and then you take the 20, which, again, goes into the general fund. We budget, in our budget, his entire salary. So, to us, it does nothing for the police.
You budget how much?
His salary is $88,873.35.
What about the overhead and all that, you know, is
That's
that,
total.
that's total.
That's total with all the incentives and education and, yep.
Okay, so who's got 5/6 of 88,000? I don't know, I'm just making up a number here, so.
Bob's gonna make fun of me because I'm not that good in math. He's gonna,
I'm not gonna,
Yeah,
I am not gonna do
Finance
that.
committee members.
I need remedial education.
Multiply by 5, divide by 6,
I'm
come
first
on.
gonna do 5, 6.
All right, come on, we're gonna make you do it. Now, this is just a test.
Okay, here we go.
What do you got? Okay,
73.
okay.
How much?
73.
$73,333.33.
So if we, let's just, if we said that number instead of 20 should be like 70,
Mm-hmm.
then I think that would be fair. We don't necessarily need to know the history, we know it's there, but just looking at it, we know that expenses are going up for everything, and it sounds like that would be a reasonable number to put in there.
Yeah, I'd want to look at it a little more, but I think it would only vary by thousands one way or the other.
Whatever.
You're right.
So can we leave you an assignment to work with the deputy?
Yep,
And figure out, so you'll have the actual cost.
Sure.
You know, and then you can, you know, maybe you want to talk to the resource officer just to make sure, you know, whatever.
mm-hmm.
And then come back and say, okay, we're gonna put 68,000 in the budget, or 72 in the budget, or something that's different than 20.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just use a little caution on that number, right? You're never gonna get
It won't
down
be.
to the, I mean, tomorrow, that officer could say, I wanna go back on the road, I wanna be reassigned, and a junior officer who's certified, who makes a lot less, maybe going to the school, and then we're not changing the budget for another year. So I just put that caveat out there,
Yeah.
it fluctuates.
And I don't think, you know, we're trying to get in the ballpark. I mean, it's a lot different than 20. We just figured that out, right? But I don't think every year we need to get it down to, you know, like rocket science. I mean, it's just something that's fair to our town, and all the others that you said are sharing in it. So
Yep. So that is, this would be anticipating for FY '26, is that what you're thinking?
What's that?
Is this, you're anticipating this for FY '26?
I would say it starts in 25, unless there's some reason not to. Or have you locked down the budget with
Yeah,
all
it's,
your other?
it's not in here. 73,000 isn't, or 68,000 isn't in this budget right now. So, and I don't have the ability to go backwards now on the
Okay, so
budget.
you've already gotten approval from some towns and.
No, we've got, but our school committee will be approving it in March, but in principle, they've already agreed to it, and we've made presentations. I've already made several presentations to other towns with $20,000 in there. So,
Okay, I'll ask the board what they think. I don't know.
It's late in the game.
Just one thing, we came up with 73,333.
yeah,
Probably you could discount off of that. We have about 11% of the student population.
right.
Or in essence, 89% should be a reimbursement. So that will affect, I think, bring that down to a little.
I think if you put the full, whatever number we agree upon in there, it'll get apportioned pretty close to the percentage of enrollment.
Enrollment.
Yeah, give or take, because the assessments have some other factors in it, like property wealth and per capita income, other things like that. They don't have a huge impact, so it's pretty much enrollment based. So,
And I would say, and I understand you have your budget, if you can make a contribution or whatever
Yep.
to help out. And
Yep.
then we'll look for next year
okay.
to formalize it. That's what I would say, Chairman, so.
You know, we would definitely endeavor to try, if we have funds available towards the end of the year, to make another payment after the 20,000. In FY '25, and then '26 we'd budget it.
Okay, but how about this? So how about this as a solution here? You guys get together, figure out what the reasonable number is.
Yep.
Send me an email, I guess, and just say, you guys got together, we figured out this is the number,
Sure.
and that's what we plan to take forward in FY '26.
Okay.
It
Very
can be
good.
that simple,
Yep.
right?
All
And
right.
then somebody like Michelle will
All right.
remember that,
I will.
and she'll say next
I'll
year, wait a
remember.
minute, where's that number? You know?
Does this affect anything like a municipal agreement where
No,
paperwork
no,
has to get changed?
no, not at all.
And Mark, you're actually right about our contribution, because we have part of it to bear on our own, so.
Right, yeah, at least this year, I think from what I've read, we're about 11%. And that,
Yeah.
so then next year, when you figure it, it may fluctuate a little bit based on enrollment, so.
Right, right.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah, and just if there is any changes year over year, we have to make sure downstairs is aware of that, because they just automatically understand $20,000 invoice gets sent to the tech school.
Yep.
So if there's changes every year, it's gonna be a lot for downstairs. I would just say, pick a number and,
What I would say is that we keep an eye on it every year, and if it gets, like now, because we looked at it, the 20,000 is
Low.
like out of bounds, right?
Yeah, I don't think it was ever covering.
Yeah, I know.
Even
But I
when
mean,
it started.
It's really out of
Yeah.
bounds now, right?
Yeah.
In this day and age. So, as we go forward, I think we just do a little check on it, and if it gets way out of bounds again, then we say, hey, wait, maybe you need to adjust, and that may not be for another 10 years. I
Sure.
don't know.
Sounds good.
Okay?
sounds good.
Fabulous.
All right.
Good, thank you. Okay, so let's get back to the original intent, and that is to go through your operating budget.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for having me tonight. And this budget is the FY '25 budget for Cape Cod Regional Technical High School, which is the work of our Finance Subcommittee. And the members of that you see on the second page, Anthony Tullio, Norm Michaud, and Stefan Galazzi from the towns that are listed there. But it's also the work of my business administrator, Erin Orcutt, her staff, and then all the lead teachers and department heads in our school as they submit initial budgets to Erin's office, and then we meet with the Finance Subcommittee to come to the final budget we're presenting tonight. A little bit on page 3, there is the enrollment from 24 to 25. We're down 2 students, so we're pretty much holding steady from the previous year, but you see there's fluctuations within each town, one of them being Harwich with an increase of 7 students, so the overall impact on the town of Harwich is going to be higher because of that shift in the amount of students from 69 to 76 students. And if you just look at the overall percentages, as Mr. Kelleher said, we're 11.5% is Harwich for the FY25 budget. Our biggest town being Barnstable, but that has been decreasing a little bit, along with Yarmouth being the second largest contributor to our school of students. However, that also is down from the last year. So you'll see on the next page, in 2020, we had 570 students.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
570 students, and now we're at 662, which is about 92 more students. There's not many districts on the Cape that can say they're increasing at that percentage. And I think this is a great time for me to say once again, which I try to say every year, is thanks to all the taxpayers who supported our project back in 2017. I think a couple things are at play. Vocational technical education, the value of it has increased exponentially, but the new facility can't be discounted as something that is really drawing kids. And the cost of college education is another factor that is, I think, impacting our enrollment as well. So it's a little bit on enrollment, and you can see on Harwich, just in particular, from 2020 to today, that's an increase of 9 students, but it has fluctuated. I think it's a high point actually for Harwich in that 5-year trend. Okay. So the next page is our FY25 budget of 4.38% increase over 24. As you see to the right, there's a 6-year history of our budget increases. I think we've been good stewards of the taxpayers' money over the many years. The biggest contributor here is a little bit of coming off of ESSER funding for FY25 and maintaining staffing in this increasing enrollment environment, but also inflation. Almost everything is costing more, and when you look at the technical side of the house and what building materials have done during this time period, the supply budgets for our technical programs can get pretty hefty.
I just have a question on
Sure.
enrollment. So Barnstable,
Yep.
can Barnstable go to the other tech school?
No, it's a great question.
Yeah.
Great question. We're regional vocational technical high schools. We don't compete with Upper Cape. Upper Cape is the one by the bridge.
Yeah,
They serve Sandwich, Falmouth, Wareham, Bourne, and Marion across the bridge.
okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then we serve all the other Cape towns.
I was just wondering, because I
Yeah.
saw the decrease, I thought, well, are they going the other one? So,
No,
yeah, you're
no.
distinct. Okay.
The only caveat to that is if they have a program we don't have, and vice versa, a student can come to our school if we don't have a program, if we have a program they don't have, and vice versa.
So
But other than that,
there's no such thing as school choice between the two schools other than a specific program?
correct, and that's called non-resident vocational tuition. It's a totally different program because it's higher. It's a higher dollar amount. School choice is about $5,500 per kid, which envisions a traditional education, not a technical education. And every year we vote not to participate in school choice
And if you bring in a student, say from Upper Cape for a
Yep.
specific program,
or from Sandwich, probably.
okay,
You'd say
do they have to
that.
provide their own transportation?
They do.
Okay,
They do.
thank you.
Yep.
You good?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
So it's a 4.38% budget. The next slide, where does the money come from? It primarily comes from the towns, as you can see, in the form of assessments for $12,694,000. But we have benefited, especially last year and the previous year, on some sizable increases in state aid. So there's been a little alleviation of the assessments for the towns. But I think you all know, as a finance committee, Chapter 70 doesn't make it over the bridge in great amounts. So Chapter 70 being the state aid for us. That is inclusive of Chapter 71, which is the reimbursement we get for transportation as well. Okay? The $815,000, which is local contribution to this budget, which adds up to the $17,484,000, is primarily excess and deficiency. We are at our max for excess and deficiency. As we go to one of the other pages, you'll see we've been giving back money to the towns over the last several years at different times for a variety of reasons, and I'll explain that when we get to that slide. But we are devoting, I believe it's $750,000 from our excess and deficiency to support this budget, which helps to bring down assessments. And just a word on assessments, and this really doesn't pertain to Harwich this year, but the overall assessment increase is only 1.62%. It's for this district. But the problem is with Harwich having 7 more students, there's been a pretty sizable increase in the assessment, the operating assessment for Harwich. So the next page is really just a graphical representation of what I just told you. You see in the red, which is state aid, you see a couple good bumps there, especially in 24 from 23. It doesn't look very big, but I want to say it was in the order of $800,000 or $900,000. That's when the legislature they've been phasing in the Student Opportunity Act, which you might be hearing about. So that has helped with assessments as well. The next page kind of talks about what I was alluding to a minute ago. If you look down the assessments column on the next page, from 2017 to 2025, you'll see in certain cases it's either a very minimal increase or even a decrease. For example, from 2019 to 2020, in the assessments column, which is the fourth column over, it actually decreases. And once again, that happens in 21, 22. It goes down almost more than 300,000 from 12,464. There's a numbering issue there on the left, sorry. And then you also see a decrease from 23 to 24 in the assessments. That's us, because we were over our excess and deficiency amount, we're mandated to pass that money back to the towns, and we do so. One other time, and I couldn't tell you which one it was, but we had put money away from the building project in a CD, and it earned interest. All interest needs to be returned to the town, and we did that as well. That's why you see some fluctuations in the, so like the budget number I'm putting here for assessments, 12,694,000. If we exceed excess and deficiency during 25, once it gets audited, I'm anticipating we're going to be doing that again. So in a future report, you'll see that we didn't assess for 12,694,000. That's what happened in those other years. Yes.
So just a question on your fiscal year 23 actuals interest income of 58,000. That was very high that year. Why was that? That's on this. I'm on here.
Yeah.
I'm on your local revenue interest income fiscal year 23 actuals 58,803.
That may have been the end of the CD we had entered into. Our treasurer had put us in a CD that had earned a good amount of interest, but that ended, as you can see, starting in 24, those are budgetary numbers.
That's not tied at all to the building project.
No, that's a totally different thing.
Seems unusually high.
Yeah. We were in a CD that was paying better. I think it was around 3 or 4 at the time.
You're putting the money to work,
Yeah.
which is refreshing.
Okay. So that's that. Okay. Next line, next page, I'm sorry, is just what is the money used for. The number one thing is teacher salaries and salaries in general, and benefits. So the second most important people in our building are our teachers, and the first being our students, and they account teachers 35%, but salaries and benefits in total represent over 76% of this entire budget. And one thing that we are noting during union negotiations, which we are in the middle of right now, and we're seeing the results of union negotiations around us, there's been some relatively decent increases because of inflation and the cost of living on Cape Cod. I don't have to talk about housing. So that inflation in the labor side of the budget, which hasn't really been that way. We've been going up at 2% and 3%. COLAs, we're going to settle in that range. We're going to be a little higher than that with this new contract once it comes out.
Are you typically, we don't want to get into contract negotiations, but are you typically looking at 3-year contracts?
Yes. Yeah. During COVID, we did 2 extensions of our 3-year agreement. But we've, as I said, we're in agreement right now. So, in negotiations right now.
Is your health care in the insurance benefits? Is that what
Yes.
that? Do you get it through the municipal group or?
I'm just double checking here. Yeah, insurance benefits, most definitely. That's the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. And you know that was an 8% increase this year. One thing that did help us bring it down a bit was Barnstable County went down for us a significant amount for the first
Yeah.
time in a few years. That's the payment we make to Barnstable County for the retiree system for Barnstable County. That did go down for us. That's our custodians, our paraprofessionals, our secretaries, and some of our non-union folks.
So the 11.2, is that inclusive of something else besides the 8 for the health?
Yeah, so if you look at, on the line item budget, you're gonna see insurance benefits start on page 9. Okay? On line 269. And insurance benefits go primarily up to retiree, or up to OPEB, which is line 278. 'Cause those are all related to, employees in one way or another,
Yeah,
or retirees. And then those last four, not the treasurer's bond, well, yeah, the treasurer's bond as well, are other insurances. I'm sorry, retiree benefits get pulled out, that's 5.7% of our budget, okay? So we break it out into active employees' insurance benefits, and then we have retirees' benefits, and there should be another other insurance as well, general insurance.
Okay, so the insurance benefits includes more than just the health.
Correct, correct, and we break it up into 3 different categories, but they're all, pretty much all of them, with the exception of Barnstable County, are in that section of the line item budget.
Thank you.
Michelle is the business manager of the Lighthouse Charter School.
Oh, nice.
I'm comparing your numbers, no. I know that the municipal group, because I went to the meeting,
Yeah.
went up 8%.
Yep.
So the town of Howard is 8%, we're 8%, so that's why I was wondering what the difference was between the 8 and 11, so.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's not the increase, that's the percentage of the overall budget, the 11.
Oh, I see.
11 in the
Yeah.
chart is 11 out of 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different, it's not the increase,
Okay.
okay? The next slide is really just the same numbers in a table form.
It's the Apple.
That's the Apple.
Plant operations is utilities?
Plant and operations, do we have utilities broken out here? I believe plant and operation, utilities are a part of plant and operations, you are
Yes.
correct. Yep. Okay.
Gas and electric. You don't have any solar?
We have natural gas, we have a little solar on the new building, and we are talking with 2 different companies about putting a canopy, solar canopy over our parking area for where the buses are parked, which is in the back left side of our property, but we haven't done that yet.
Okay.
And, yeah, we have natural gas for heat. Okay? So going on to the, any questions on the budget? Because I'm going to move into debt next and assessments.
How many teachers are there at the tech school? Just
We have about 66, 67 teachers, about 127 overall employees
okay.
in total.
And your staff's pretty stable, I assume? I mean,
Yeah, for the most part, there's been some.
retirements.
It's become less stable over in the last several years because of housing, quite frankly.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and the teaching profession isn't the most popular profession to go into anymore. Finding staff is becoming more and more challenging every year.
So the model with the tech school should be, your construction group should be building houses so that teachers and staff can live in the houses.
Problem, that house costs about $350,000 to build now.
Well, we're actually having a discussion, I mean, I was just throwing out there last Saturday with the police and whatnot, a couple of things. One is, if you have a municipal employee, why do we charge them real estate taxes? Why don't
Right.
we give them that free? Maybe that's an incentive, right?
Yeah,
Or, if a policeman comes here and says, I want to be part of the force, or a fireman or whatever, you say, okay, well, you need to buy a house in town, here's I'm making numbers up,
Yeah.
$100,000. You stay with us for 10 years, or pick some number, and that's yours.
Yeah.
If you leave in the meantime, obviously you're gonna pay us back,
Yeah.
whatever. But at least it would jumpstart the down payment and get them in the cycle before, the prices are just going nuts.
something like that has to start happening. I agree. Like we had the fire chiefs come to us from the Cape. Chatham led the charge, but many of them joined the effort. We have, in our science program now, senior year, we have an elective called fire science. because they're having a hard time getting firefighters.
Yeah.
And you know that many firefighters are also plumbers and electricians.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to expose the kids to the firefighting service, and if we can expose one or two that want to go on and do that, hopefully it can help to.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It seems like now on the Cape in particular, since it's so hard to kind of not fighting, but they're, I'm grabbing your guy and you're grabbing my guy. And
Right, and that's happening in the school arena too. So it's also making a wage competition, which is driving up the cost of
Yeah,
what
you
I'm
wonder where it
presenting.
stops, if it ever stops.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
Anyhow, we
May
won't
I-
solve that problem tonight.
So if I can just summarize.
Sure.
So you're asking for 4.38%, and that is a weighted average of all this, what is the money for,
Yep,
right? And we're seeing teacher salaries 35.1% of the total
the
budget?
total 17 million.
Okay. And so what would you say is the what are the main drivers of the 4.38%? Is it just inflation overall?
I would say on the supply side, it's inflation.
Yeah.
There's a few positions in here that used to be covered by ESSER. You know about ESSER, so we have 2 school nurses in our school. We brought one on during ESSER. It's been a great arrangement. It's the right way to do it. So we do have that we brought that position on, and we have because of 2 things, because of COVID, but then we moved into a bigger facility. We do have additional custodian that was brought onto the budget, which used to be on ESSER. So some of it is that, and then a little bit of the wage inflation, and then the 8% in health insurance didn't help either.
So if everybody knows about ESSER are the emergency relief funds that were given to the schools during COVID. And they have a life, they're ending
Of
September
course.
24.
Yeah,
24,
25,
no.
September 25.
So,
Oh, fiscal 25,
Yeah.
you're right, 24.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the schools use these funds to hire staff and do other things during COVID.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and now that money's going away.
Yeah.
the train has left the station,
Yeah,
as they say. Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, so there was a question related to that, and we'll deal with Monomoy on a larger scale as to what kind of a internal conversation there was about the ability to maintain those additional staff positions.
And we had those discussions. Keep in mind, during that time, we've gone up in student body. We've added, from the enrollment slide, we went from 570 students just before COVID to 90 more students over that time period, and we moved into a bigger facility. So as I said, the nurses, the additional nurse, and really, we used to have a nurse and an aide. Now we have 2 nurses. It's a much better arrangement for providing for the health of our students, and they can do so much more than if we had an aide. And the savings to go back to an aide, we just felt was negligible. So we maintained that nursing position, and then the custodial positions really were needed to deal with the new school and the demands of the new facility. So we had been covering them in ESSER, now they've gone into the budget. So we did have those discussions, and we did feel as though we needed them moving forward.
So that's less than 2 FTEs
Right,
that you were getting from ESSER,
right,
right?
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, one other thing I should mention, because it was asked before we started tonight, we are investigating, because we have a significant waiting list at our school right now. We have, this current year, we have 457 applications for 186 spots. Last year, we had 417 for 182 spots. We're looking for ways to provide more students to vocational technical education. So we've entered into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Harwich for the property at 374 Main Street. And we are currently trying to fundraise for establishing 2 programs over on that property. Veterinary science and environmental science and technology. So over the next year and a half, we're going to be I'm hoping to bring a budget here next year that has 2 teachers in it, one for each of those programs. Obviously, that'll have fiscal costs, but also it will begin the process of bringing more students into our school.
what's the process by which you if you have all these applicants and you only take so many, what's the process by which you determine who gets to go to the tech
We have
school?
an admissions process right now. It is under review by the legislature whether we're going to be able to maintain an admissions process, but that process is a student applies to our school. So they provide us their 7th and 8th grade grades, attendance. No longer do we ask for discipline unless it's very serious, because it's a demotion of 10 points off their 100-point scale. We used to look at discipline as a whole, but kind of the state said you can't really do that anymore. So unless you've caused a felony or created a felony or committed a felony, I should say, it's not going to hurt in your application process. There's also a personal interview and a recommendation from a counselor at the school they're coming from. So the two biggest drivers to getting in are attendance now, because we've tweaked our attendance policy. Grades have been lowered as an overall percentage of the admissions policy. And the other is the personal interview. That'll be 66 points out of 100 if you ace those two sections. So how do we do it? We then take all the scores and put them in order, and we offer acceptance to the top 186. Usually we go past that number because not everybody says yes. And then it continues up until late August, when we get to a student body of 180, 186, which
So it
is
is
our
a
aim.
very competitive process.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, and that's a new thing for us. Back when I first started teaching there in 1994, we were at a low, and then we got to a waiting list in the early 2000s, but that's been gone for quite a while. But as I said, the popularity, the new school, the
Yeah, it
cost of
speaks to
college.
the product you're offering too. I mean.
Yeah, no, we've got a great staff providing great opportunities. Just yesterday, we had 49 employers in our gym for a job fair for our students. And there's a demand out there for what we're training these kids to do. So, excited about that.
Okay,
All right?
keep going.
Thank you. So really the last couple things are the debt on the building. We are,
Lost track of what page you're on.
you are on
After the apple.
after the apple, the page
Yeah.
after the apple. I am not responsible for the clip art on this. I just want to be clear about that.
Good job.
So we are in year 6 of paying off that school, and it's a declining debt schedule, as you can see. Now, that is based on enrollment, so you may not decline in a particular year if you have a big increase in students. I don't think that happened in Harwich, but you could correct me. But the principal and interest you see there for the entire district is $5.7 million this coming year, and it will continue to decline for 20 years, and it will be paid off in 2039. The portion that is Harwich's of that debt is, for this year, is $658,149. And the next page is what Harwich would pay for this operating budget we've talked about this evening, and that assessment will be $1,546,671.
How do you weight the capital debt assessment?
The capital debt assessment is purely on enrollment,
It's on enrollment.
and it's a one-year lag.
Yeah,
With respect to operating budget, we wait for the governor's budget to come out, and we get the municipal minimum contribution, and that's the starting point for everybody's assessment. Then we apportion transportation by enrollment, capital by enrollment, and then we do supplemental only if there's additional funds needed to support the budget we're presenting. And that, you put those 4 things together, and you get the overall assessment, which is the $1,546,000.
sorry, it was the capital
It's
assessment?
the minimum
the
contribution
operating?
first, which comes from the state. We don't impact that at all. And then it's capital, transportation, and supplemental.
So the bill that Howard receives from the tech is $2,204,000.
So if you go to the next page, you are correct. So you put those two together, one for debt, one for capital, and one for operating, and you get just over $2.2 million. Does everybody see that? Okay. And then the only other thing financially I'd like to speak on is we've taken the unfunded liability of retiree benefits seriously. We have reached a 14.35% threshold of covering that liability. We still have 86% of it to go. We do have a schedule that if we maintain the earnings that we're getting from the Plymouth County OPEB Trust that we started in 2015, we put, this budget has $300,000 in it, that all it does is it goes from this budget into that OPEB trust, okay? And that's in that insurance section we talked about earlier, and it says OPEB obligation, and it was $300,000.
And what is this for exactly?
This is to put into a fund to,
Other post-employee, well, here it is,
Yeah.
post-employment benefits.
so what, we have more retirees now than we have active employees drawing benefits for health, primarily health insurance, which is extremely expensive, as you know. So the unfunded liability of that is that we budget it every year. We're trying to get to a point when we wouldn't have to budget it any year. We'd have a fund that paid for that. There'd be some monies that would probably need to continue to be put into it, but you wouldn't be budgeting for the whole thing every year. Like if you look in this year's budget, the retirees' health insurance line item is $702,000. None of those people work for us anymore,
Right.
but we still have to pay that. So
The cost of doing business,
it is the cost of doing business.
Bob, quick question.
Yeah.
Teachers get their retirement from teachers' retirement.
Correct.
Their health insurance they get from
They get from us.
you. So-
Yes.
So you got that, I can see that's a.
It's a big number. Yep. And it's getting bigger every year.
Spouses covered as well?
Yep. Yep.
So your teachers.
In 65, at 65, they go to Medicare,
Yeah.
but we still cover the supplement that goes along with Part B.
Oh, yeah.
So as a data point, just as a data point, because we always hear that tech school education is more expensive because of the way it's structured and the materials you're buying and all. So forget about debt, but if you just look at the operating assessment of 1.546 million, and we have 69 students, that comes out to be about $22,415 per student, which is what I would expect. I mean,
Yeah.
it may sound frightening to some of you, but that's kind of the number I would expect,
Yeah,
you know, without
about
the
right.
debt.
yep,
Just because it is more expensive.
yep,
It's just a known fact,
yep.
so.
So, we hope to retire or fully fund the liability of health insurance by, I think it's around 2040, because the other line item that's in here is Barnstable County assessment, and that number is, for this year, is $516,000. At some point, that's going to sunset when they fully fund their retirement fund, and they currently schedule it at about 2038. If it goes at 2038, we're going to take that money, whatever we're budgeting that year, and put it into OPEB and continue that going until we fully fund the liability. I will not be working at Cape Cod Tech by then. I just wanted to tell you that.
Will you be a beneficiary of OPEB?
I hope, yes, it would be securing my retiree benefits at that
That's
point.
good. From a programmatic standpoint, is it fair to assume that your automotive program is getting more and more focused on electric vehicles these days?
So, thanks for asking. We did get a grant through the Capital Skills Program, the Mass Capital Skills Program, and we got $225,000 for curriculum, for EVs. We got 5 vehicles. We got one almost new Volkswagen ID4, and then we got 2 hybrids and 2 other EVs of older vintage that the kids can take apart, look
Sure.
at it. There's a tremendous amount of safety equipment that goes into that too. You have to have a dedicated bay. It needs to have all the proper signage. So we got all that with that grant. And really, the frameworks, the curriculum yet really hasn't been written. Like, if you look at the frameworks for auto tech, it's not going to mention EV, but we're starting to introduce it slowly, and over time, I think that'll change. Although we're running into some problems with those too, but that's a different issue for another day. But our students are starting to get exposed to that. Also, electric buses are starting to, because we're going to be going out for our transportation contract for next year, after next year, I should say. That's another thing. Transportation is going to be a big cost driver in the next budget I present, because this contract will be over. So I'm hearing horror shows on that one. But our current provider is exploring electric buses to potentially have some savings. But there's also the performance of those buses that need to be looked at too.
Yeah, and the cost,
Yep,
just buy it.
yeah.
All right, questions? Dan?
If you take the proposed budget for 2025, divide that by the enrollment, comes out to 26,411.
Right.
You have some sense on how that compares to other tech schools in the state?
If you look at per pupil spending, they're going to take a couple things off of that number, but we are, on the Cape, are higher. If you look at the schools on the Cape, we're higher in general. We're probably,
understandable.
yeah, we're probably I haven't looked at it recently, but when I was looking at it more closely, we were like number 4 in the vocational technicals. There's 28 regional voc techs across the state.
Okay.
And that's comparing to Metro Boston, comparing to Western Massachusetts. We were very close to Upper Cape in our per pupil expenditure.
So how many regional technical schools did you say were in this?
28.
20. Is that established by legislation?
I believe so. There are other schools. There's agricultural schools. There's 4 of those.
Okay.
Smith, Essex Tech, Norfolk, and Bristol. So they're focused, some of them are focused on voc tech and agriculture. Then there's your comprehensive schools, which is a traditional high school with a wing or certain programs within it, like Quincy has that, Medford has that, where they don't belong to a regional voc tech, so they do it themselves. Springfield, Holyoke all have their own voc techs within them, in their public school system. So a large percentage of the Commonwealth is covered by one or more, or one, I should say, regional voc tech. Like we cover the Cape with 2. You go up Route 3, you're going to have South Shore, and you're going to have Tri-County off 495. Southeastern's off 495, covering a lot of those towns down those highways. Then you go over to Greater New Bedford. Voc is another regional voc. So you cover a lot of towns, but there are some cities and towns that do it on their own too. Okay, the hodgepodge of ways to provide vocational technical education.
Yeah, I come from New York State, and I work for the state education authority.
BOCES?
BOCES,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I know that structure.
Right,
And the CEO of the BOCES is actually the district superintendent for that BOCES
right,
district.
right.
So I was just curious how that organization compares to Westbury, Massachusetts.
Now, BOCES is academics and technical, are they under the same roof? Under the same roof?
Academics and technical, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, because,
In fact, a larger component of the BOCES services is special education to severely disabled students.
okay.
It's a big number.
Yeah, we have everything under one roof too, serving students with disabilities as well. Not severe, not super severe, but 20% of our students are students with disabilities. Yeah, yeah, and that's a low watermark because of our popularity, which we're trying to figure out why in the application process. But we've been as high as 32% special needs, so that's all in here too.
So do you get separate special education aid for those kids?
Other than this IDEA funding, which all schools get based on a metric, we do get IDEA about $200,000 a year. And you'll see that, by the way, if it's defraying any costs in that other column on the line item budget. And the expected grant funds, we have a last column, SPED, and we also get some Perkins funds for vocational technical.
The aid that the state provides for technical schools,
Yes.
is that based on some kind of a formula?
Yes, it's the same formula, but voc techs get an extra, I believe it's $4,000 per student in the overall formula. But that's that 3.9 million you saw, but that's also including transportation reimbursement as well.
That includes the aid for the special education kids?
That's correct. Well, the Cape, as I said, the money doesn't come over the bridge. So that's why the assessments fall heavily on the towns.
So if you looked at the extra 4,000 and take it off the 22 number that I was calculating, it gets you down to about 18, which I think where Monomoy is, somewhere, for traditional education.
Yeah, yeah.
So at least the state is recognizing there's a need for more money to spend on technical education. So,
About 80% of our budget is supported by the towns. Yeah. If you go to other parts of the state, it could be flipped. It could be 20%, 80% by the state. Yeah.
What's a good time to speak again and memorialize the reallocation of the security costs so we don't miss it next year?
Sure.
When's a good time for us to talk?
Well, I think I could just come in with it once Kevin and I speak, and we come to a number, we'll share it, and then you'll see it in the next year's budget. Okay?
yeah, so I think they left with an action item that he's going to get together the deputy. They're going to come back, they're going to figure out a number. They're going to send me an email or whatever, however you want to communicate, and I will share that with you folks, and somebody will remember it for next year. Maybe you'll all remember it for next
And
year.
their school board will have to kick it around before next year.
What's that?
The school board, their school board will have to kick that number around.
Well, of course they will. Yeah.
Well, the real thing they'll have to do is support the budget and that new number in it. I don't necessarily see that as a problem. And I've been thinking as we're talking, you talk about the 11% for Harwich. There's two ways we could do it. Put the whole in there and you invoice us for the total amount, or we just take the Harwich number off. And we got to figure out how to do that.
We'll figure it out, but we'll adjust it based on what's reasonable at the time, right?
Yep.
So, I mean,
Okay.
that's all we're all asking for, so. It's good.
No, totally understand.
All right, anything else? And you have nothing that looks like an article for town meeting, right?
Pardon me?
Nothing that looks like an article for town meeting.
Nothing that
right?
looks like an article, just the debt and the
Yeah,
operating.
yeah, okay. All
Okay?
right.
Thank you.
Well, excellent,
Great, thanks.
nothing but good things to say about you and your team over there.
Thank you.
I hear an awful lot of good things, and
Thank
we
you very much.
appreciate the fact that you and your staff are educating some fine young adults, so
Thank you.
keep doing
And
that.
Invitation to all, if you haven't been over,
Okay.
come on over.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bob.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you again.
Take care.
Yep. Okay, the other new business thing we had on the agenda was warrant articles. Of course, we don't have a warrant, so there's nothing to discuss. I will just say that I did contact the moderator, because that's who we work for. And I expressed to him my concern anyhow on behalf of you folks, that typically when you look at the timeline, sort of the first week in February, we should have had a warrant. And here we are, at least 30 days later, we have no warrant. And I basically said to him, how do we remedy this? He got back to me and told me he at least contacted the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and expressed that concern, and would hope to hear more. I don't know what that means. It may mean we see a warrant tomorrow or 2 weeks from now. I don't know. Our job is to react to that warrant once we get it. So anyhow, that's where that stands at the moment.
I think you mentioned something the other day about the candidates for being appointed to this committee,
Yes.
and you haven't heard anything from,
I haven't, other than a few weeks ago, Michael told me that he was working on it, and he had hoped to have them in place by our meeting last week on Saturday, but that did not happen, so when he's ready, he will advance that to me as to what's going on. I do know of at least two people that had their names there. I don't know of others, but I mean, one is the guy you recommended.
Right. Yeah.
I've got some others.
Yeah, John would be a good addition, John Moretti.
Yeah, but it would have been nice if they were here to start the process, right? I mean, it's hard to jump in the middle of this, right?
Yeah.
Getting up to town meeting, it's like, wait, I'm just sitting here, right? So anyhow, more to come on that one. So now let's go to old business, which would be, we sat in an all-day session last week on operating budgets, and I'd just like to know if anybody has reactions to that. I am expecting an update based on some of the tweaks that came out, like an engineering cost over here, should be over here, that kind of thing that we heard at that meeting. I would expect we get a new version of what the operating budget looks like. But beyond that, anybody have any specific observations or questions?
I did bring this up at the meeting, and there was a response that the town administrator would get back, but we just need to check and make sure we get the answers. I asked if on 204 Sisson, as we have had in the past, if we could have a breakout. It wasn't at all mentioned on any of the budget information. If we can get a breakout of the revenues and the expenses for that. I did see that Kara was remote on the, at the selectmen's meeting. I believe she just talked about the programming. I may be wrong. When I went to YouTube, it started in the midst of her thing. I would like to get an update of all the capital programs that we've spent money on there. Just get a more, every building, or even the Albro House had a line item with expenses.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that we get something like that.
Yeah, we started that discussion, if I remember right, I was at least asking the question, okay, you collect the rents, then what happens, right? And we don't even have that number at the moment as to what that number is,
Right.
let alone, we heard that the DPW basically is paying the electric bill, right? Didn't I hear that? For the gas
Yes.
bill and all the utilities
Yes.
and, whatever. So it is a hodgepodge. There needs to be at some point a P&L statement in municipal form for that building. That's what we're all looking for at some point in time. The other comment that you made, that I have followed up on, that has to do with the generator at the harbor. I have asked a town administrator specifically to send me that document. My feeling on that, and I'm just running this by you guys, I'm so frustrated about this lack of information. If I don't hear something by Monday, I would hope you would support me in submitting a request for public documents. And that's like a Freedom of Information Act request that goes to the town clerk. We need to get our work done. We all have fiduciary responsibility, but I have to at least look at that document, what that item is, and say, hey, to you folks, do I recommend you support it or not? And then, a lot of other maybe details associated with it. But we just need the information. So are you folks okay if I don't see it by Monday, that I do
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Actually, by the way, I went on the website today and I Googled Freedom of Information Act, and up came a form that had Anita's contact information on it. So I pointed that out to the town clerk, and she is fixing that, hopefully. So anyhow,
Public records.
no, I know,
Yeah.
of course, of
No, I
course.
support you wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't have to be this hard.
In fact, your predecessor, John Choi, expressed to me a lot of frustration about trying to get information out of the town administrator's office.
Well,
In fact, that's one of the reasons why he quit.
yeah. So I think, this would be like a
So-
trial balloon. I have no problem if Mr. Galvin wants to call me and say, hey, what's this about? You've been asking for it for 6 months at least,
Have you asked in writing?
No, but it's on tape at capital outlay meetings. I had a private meeting because that was suggested. Still nothing.
So anyhow, we'll pursue that. We have next Wednesday, same room, 6 o'clock. 6:30, we have the Monomoy School District in. It's 6 o'clock. I invited the fire department in. They sent that memo around that
Yep.
everybody get it, that they sent me the deputy sent me subsequent to our meeting. And they want to come at 6 o'clock. In my head, without getting any details, I'm trying to wrestle with, we added 4 bodies last year, the overtime was gonna go down. Now we're asking for a significant increase in overtime. So did we save any overtime or didn't we save overtime? And by the way, instead of overtime, I said to them, maybe we should try and add 2 bodies this year and 2 next year. When does it end? And they have a rationale that they want to share with us. It says it doesn't make sense to only bring 2 on versus the overtime number. So we just got to get that straight. Yeah.
Could you ask them, I think it may be helpful with our decision-making, to bring along the service calls, what their volume of service calls per month. Like, I can see them adding people during the summer or on weekends, but kind of build in that type of information, like a little comparison from, say like from last year, they had 2,000 service calls. This year, we had 2,000 service calls.
Yeah, the trouble is with the, I mean, if you think about it, you know, obviously the peak period is the summer, right? But I don't think in the fire service you can get summer-only employees, you know what I mean? It's,
No, I
you know,
realize
you're
that.
taking on full-time, year-round employees, so it does factor into it, but I will mention it to them. And
Yeah, that would justify, to some degree, some of the overtime, you know, during but, you know, it just brings some more data.
yeah, I mean, the other part of it is, quite frankly, and they do have data on when is it we only have one person standing left in Harwich to cover whatever's happening while everybody else is at the hospital, basically, I mean, right? I mean, that's like a 2-hour transit back and forth with, you know, plus the paperwork they gotta do and unloading the patient and all. I mean, it's like it takes them at least 2 hours to transit that, to go through it. So I think that happens quite a bit, I mean, a lot. And it's the nature of what they provide for a service. But the question is, when do you get to what is utopia? I don't know. You know, it's not one fireman at every street. I know that, but it's, you know, it's something. I mean, it's, you know, you're trying to provide adequate coverage. And the other thing is, we got a population that's aging. No secret. We got a hospital that's X amount of miles away. And for some reason, people like to hurt themselves in the summertime. I don't know. It's probably overexertion, you know, heart attacks and stuff is probably more than anything else. So, I don't know, but they'll be in, and we'll take the first half hour and we'll try and sort through that, and we may have to send them back, and, you know, we may not be happy. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We got to work through it. Don't know if we'll have a warrant by then. I'm expecting Dana's going to start pumping out at least budget spreadsheet stuff. I mean, he's already started with it. I don't know where he is this evening, but we'll find out. Anything else? Yeah, fine.
There were a couple of things that were mentioned. One that came out of the 204 conversation, which was having essentially P&Ls for all the revolving funds, because there was revolving funds. I think people are to a great extent unfamiliar with how much economically, how much in terms of dollars take place what is effectively off budget,
Yeah.
effectively off book, and that which came up in that 204 conversation when we found out that they don't show up in the budget because they're basically operating under a revolving fund.
Yeah.
And the fact is, we have something like 15 revolving funds, or whatever. It's a fairly good list that we go through approving every year, or the town, or the taxpayers do, but they really have no idea what's going on in them, other than the fact, perhaps, that they don't see anything in the budget. So revolving funds was one. The other, and it kind of related to this indirectly to a topic that was brought up, was being able to get the details for under the interfund transfer number.
Okay, tell me more.
Okay, one of the sources and uses numbers, we did get a nice schedule for other revenue. The 16 million estimated local receipts, that breakdown. But the interfund transfer number underneath it, which is 1,116,000, there are components to that we have no idea.
So you want a breakdown?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear anybody mention, and it was the first topic, I think, of the budget we had, presentations we had, and that is the disconnect or confusion that seemed to be with water, wastewater. And what that final number was, I didn't hear any outcome of that. I think they went away saying they're gonna get back together and figure it out. So at the moment, I don't know what that number is.
Well, but it sounded like, and that ended up having to do with the interfund transfers, it sounded like the number in the sources and uses is going to end up going up.
Yeah, but we don't know the number.
Right. We
Yeah.
don't know what it'll
Yeah.
be, but it sounded like it'll go up, which will reduce the, we'll call it profit that we're showing right now.
Yep. Okay, anybody else?
You're gonna have a burden on you, is just, you know, if there's anything we can do to help to move things along, just speak up. I mean, I'm the clerk, I'll work on the agendas.
You know, the burden on this is, quite frankly, it's trying to extract the material. It is. Get a warrant. Once we have a warrant, then we can start talking about what we want to do with the warrant. For instance, last year, and I think I saw a list, there's a whole bunch of CBC articles. I mean, there's like 10 of them in there if I saw a list, right? I have no idea what they are, okay? But I do know that CPC is a dedicated source of funding that can only be spent on certain things. And that once the CPC committee votes what they're gonna do, it really is their decision to make on what projects are important and how they rank in the town and, you know, where the money should be spent. On those, I would simply like to get someone from the CPC to come in and just walk us through the 10, right? And then I think we're gonna reduce the questions like, well, do you have a bid price to that? Or will you have a bid price to that? You know, whatever it is, you know, by town meeting and that type of thing. I'm not gonna argue if someone says, and I'm being totally facetious, that we need to spend $80,000 on flower beds at Brooks Park. And they're not doing that, but I'm just saying as an example. Don't quote me, right? But if that's what's
You're on tape
decided.
now, Peter.
Huh?
You're on tape now.
I know, but it's not, I don't think it's our purview to say that's a worthy
Yeah,
project or
right.
not, you know what I mean? Because they've gone through months of, you know, having people submit forms and going through all this kind of stuff.
Well, I've had to think, and have had to consider what's allowed under the act,
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
which we don't.
So those should be fairly straightforward, we need to be informed, right? The other ones that we haven't even seen or have an idea about yet, I don't know until we see them, you know? I don't know, we'll just have to see, right? And then we are scheduled on the budget because we're required to do it, a public meeting, which will be the 21st. It'll be in here. Hopefully we have the town administrator here. If you remember last year, and I think the year before, we had no one attending the public meeting, but it's kind of typical, but we are required by the charter to do that. Did you go back and check the charter on capital outlay plan?
I did see it, but I spoke to Dana about it. He thought that maybe what you thought is we did have a combined Board of Selectmen capital outlay meeting, and that may have sufficed.
That's my recollection, but
Yeah, I mean, it does say that it's supposed to be but that's what Dana thought. Maybe we could assume that that joint meeting covered us on that.
yeah. and
Maybe
that-
get a little confirmation on that.
And then what happens is, there's an article fallout associated with that. So whatever's in year one, if there are articles associated with it, we will get to play with the articles, if you know what I mean. Dance with the articles, and make our determinants based on that. So we did a joint meeting in January. Yeah, so I will check again, but, you know.
There is something in there, but, you know, I think we did cover it, but look at the charter, it is there.
Yeah.
So we'll
I actually went, you know what I did was I went through our charge, and the charge talks about the budget, it talks about a joint meeting in January with the Board of Selectmen on the capital outlay plan, but it does not talk about, and shame on us if we missed it and didn't put it in there. And by the way, it brings up a point under other. We spent that time putting the charge together, we voted that charge. I was informed the other day, before we got started with our budget session on Saturday, that because we fall under the town moderator, that the selectmen had no business telling us what to do. It's our charge, we voted it. It's good documentation, but it's not theirs. So, just a point of interest.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, anything else? I'm sure we're gonna be meeting somewhat more frequently as time goes on. If it gets really ugly on trying to meet a timeline, we may think about doing some Saturday session. I don't know, I don't wanna even think about it yet, but keep it in the back of your head. We have to respond. I mean, we have to support getting to town meeting, and we may not like it, we may be kicking and screaming, but we have to do that, so. All right,
Sounds good.
and we never saw Dana. Okay, I will entertain a motion then to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, it's moved
Plenty
and
of interest.
seconded to adjourn. All those
Yes.
in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We are adjourned, thank you.